Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 4 articles for you in this episode this morning, and this will be the final episode here on the 3rd day of February. Well, all these URLs are listed in the description of this video for your convenience, in case you want to pull them up to look up any information for your research or check out any of the videos that's in most of them. The first one I have here is off of KTLA.com, and it says 474 arrested, sexually exploited children rescued during statewide human trafficking operation. LASD were arrested and dozens of sexually exploited children and adult victims were rescued across California during a statewide operation to combat human trafficking, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department announced on Tuesday. Federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies and task force, including the Los Angeles Regional Human Trafficking Task Force and the 3rd annual Operation Reclaim and Rebuild, according to a Sheriff's News release. The statewide operation took place over a 3-day period between last Thursday and Saturday. 474 arrests were made, including 142 males on solicitation charges and 36 males on suspicion of pimping, according to figures provided by the Sheriff's Department. Additionally, 28 commercially and sexually exploited children and 27 adult victims were rescued. You are worthy of more, and we will work tirelessly with our partners to provide you services and help you rebuild your life. McDonnell addressing the victims during a news conference on Tuesday. Who were recovered during the operation were being cared for by various children and family services agencies across the state, according to sheriff's officials. The Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking and the Saving Innocence organization were coordinating efforts to help victims in LA County. Reclaim and Rebuild focused on rescuing victims of sexual slavery and human trafficking, providing victims with much-needed services, identifying and arresting their captors, seeking successful prosecutions, and disrupting the demand for vulnerable victims by targeting their customers, the release stated. Another trafficking task force throughout our state joined in the enforcement operation to send the clear message that California law enforcement shares a unified mandate. You not be tolerated in our state. And there's a correction to the article. It says an earlier version of this story had an incorrect surname for the LA County Sheriff. Updated. The next one I have for you is off of BizPac Review, and it says, it looked ugly. Clinton lands first day on open market and then tanks immediately. Laureate Education Incorporated, which has close ties to Bill and Hillary Clinton, tanked on its first day in the stock market. The for-profit firm initial public offering, or the IPO, of stock to potential investors was put on the market on Wednesday by KKR and other leveraged buyout owners in the hope of reducing a crushing $4 billion in debt. Before the company was to go public as a NASDAQ-traded firm, it was clear the stock price would not command the owner's projected $17 to $20 price target. Late Tuesday before Wednesday's opening, the market priced the Laureate IPO at $14, about 15% below Laureate's estimates. The Laureate IPO went nowhere during the day, closing at $12.46. Appetite for this stock, it looked ugly today. Lon Jurek told the Daily Caller News Foundation investigative group. Jurek is founder and president of Street Insider. Question about the company. The private owners, they're liquidating it. Investors don't like its big debt. They weren't biting, Jurek said. Laureate operates 71 educational institutions in 25 countries with a heavy presence in Latin America. The Clintons were not far from the minds of the Wall Street observers either. Laureate's relationship with the Clintons began in 2010. The president $16.5 million as its honorary chancellor for 5 years. Baltimore-based laureate, led by Chairman and CEO Douglas Becker, also donated up to an additional $5 million to the Clinton Foundation. And during former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's tenure, the Department of State's U.S. Agency for International Development awarded $55 million to the International Youth Foundation, which is linked to the laureate and is chaired by Becker. The issue of laureate Clinton's ties came to a head in July of 2016, a letter to the IRS Commissioner John Costigan by 64 Republican members of the U.S. House of Representatives, saying such relationships create an appearance that millions of dollars in taxpayer money was channeled to the IYF by Secretary Clinton's State Department as a kickback for her husband's generous contract as an honorary laureate chancellor. Was informed by the congressman on July the 22nd of 2016 that he referred the matter to the Federal Tax Agency's Exempt Operations Program, which regulates charities. While the laureate did disclose the $16.5 million payment to Bill Clinton in its at the Securities and Exchange Commission, the DCNF reported Tuesday that the company's officials said nothing about either the IRS referral or congressional concerns. The SEC requires firms planning IPOs to disclose all potential risk factors to investors. Donald Dion, attorney and owner and chief investment officer of the DRD Investments, told the DCNF the IRS review omission and described the IPO's performance Wednesday as a complete disaster. Dion said, "We look at every risk problem. You list everything. Materially significant problems, you invite the plaintiff's bar to get involved, suggesting class action lawsuits could follow failure to disclose such risk." Laureate IPO promoters met little enthusiasm before the offering went public, Dion said. They were not getting early orders, which is a bad sign, he said. Jurisic said that when the price dropped to $14, the company tried to compensate by increasing the number of available shares from 29 million to 33 million, but people don't like these deals. The poor laureate, showing contrast with very strong IPO market seen since Donald Trump's election victory. Martin Steinbeck, the global IPO leader at EY, told CNBC the 2017 IPO outlook was positive. "We have strong momentum from the fourth quarter, so the IPO activity rose by 25% compared to the third quarter," he told CNBC's Squawk Box Europe. "Succeed even in this market," Dion said. "No one wanted this puppy." Jurisic said another problem for the company was that a big chunk of the company's operations are overseas, including a major presence in Latin America. Chile, Brazil, and Ecuador are tightening their regulations governing for-profit educational companies like Laureate. He said those regulatory changes could adversely affect the company's bottom line, and there could be changes under the Trump administration. "There's no appetite amid all this uncertainty," he told the DCNF. The company also hinted in its filing it could face Justice Department prosecution under the Foreign False Claims Act concerning Title VI of the rules set down by the U.S. Department of Education. Under federal rules, company employees at for-profit schools are not supposed to be awarded commissions based on the number of students they enrolled. However, Laureate hinted in its filing that violations may have occurred. The DOE, or if the DOE were to determine that we or any of our U.S. institutions violated this requirement of Title VI programs, or if we were liable in false claims actions alleging a violation of this law, or if any third parties we have engaged were to violate this law, we could be fined or sanctioned by the DOE or subject to other monetary liability or penalties that could be substantial, including the possibility of treble damages under false claims action, any of which could harm our reputation, impose significant costs, and have a material adverse effect on our businesses, financial conditions, and result of operations. Laureate stated in its federal filing, faces corruption allegations by the Turkish government. There's just a lot of questions about this company, Jurisic said. I have here is off of prophecynewswatch.com, and it says, City Killers, Electromagnetic Pulse Artillery Shells. The U.S. Army is developing a compact electromagnetic pulse weapon, an EMP weapon, capable of fitting inside a 155 millimeter artillery shell capable of being fired near key enemy infrastructure. The artillery shell, with its non-explosive payload, would be used to disable the electronics and radio communications equipment of anything within given radius around its flight path. Such a weapon would disable the modern war fighting capabilities of an enemy, but aimed at an enemy town or city, it would act as a siege weapon that would disable all communications and electronic infrastructure in the vicinity. To the nuclear-based neutron bombs that the Soviet Union developed to kill intense radiation while leaving equipment unaffected, the EMP rounds would disable sensitive equipment while leaving biological life unharmed. The line of research in the Army research document that describes the EMP artillery attack vector and its uses says, extensive use of wireless RF radio frequency networking for critical infrastructure and communication systems provides an alternative attack vector for neutralization of an adversary's underlying industrial, civil, and communications infrastructure without the destruction of the hardware associated with these systems. Advances in munitions-based and power technologies make it possible for the implementation of non-kinetic cyber and electromagnetic or electronic warfare (EW) attacks that could be delivered by artillery-launched munitions. The precision delivery of the non-kinetic effects, or the NKE, electronics payload close to the target allows low-power operations, which limits the geographical extent of impacted systems and reduces the overall impact on the electromagnetic spectrum. The eventual goal, as implied in the research proposal, is to shrink the devices to the extent that multiple EMP bombs can fit inside a single shell, but at this point, the Army is still working to miniaturize and is open to the possibility of employing larger bore guns if needed. The Army already possesses much larger directed EMP weapons, both ground-based and those mounted on drones that can disable all equipment they overfly. A reported 2012 test of weaponized drone dubbed CHAMP, or Counter Electronics High-Powered Microwave Advanced Missile, took out the electronics on 7 targets it flew over on a Utah test range. Using directed EM pulses, the system uses ultra-powerful microwave generators to overload the electronics found in military or civilian equipment. Whether this weapon would use traditional microwave generators, as the drone does, or some other yet unrevealed method to generate the sizable EMPs needed is unclear, but the Army is researching several EMP generation systems. On the truck or in a download facing orientation on a drone is relatively easy, but any ground-based vehicle requires some degree of line of sight, whereas a drone can be shot down. If the Army is successful in miniaturizing the EMP bomb so that it fits into an artillery ordnance, far more difficult for an enemy to stop the attack. Nuclear weapons generate enormously powerful EMPs, but the accompanying heat, deadly radiation, and kinetic energy make them impractical for tactical use on the battlefield. The Army's focus on medium-powered EMP able precisely to target a specific area with such an effective delivery system implies that the Pentagon is concerned with the collateral damage. Frying the electronics of a government ministry or weapons cache while keeping a hospital and water treatment plant outside its range remains a possibility. In a world where battles are fought with drones, advanced communications, smart munitions, and highly mobile troops bring your enemy back to pre-digital age, and shutting down all communication equipment is an enormous tactical and strategic advantage. It has been proven at larger sizes, but now the challenge is to shrink the system into a package small enough to be fired in an artillery shell. A matter of time until we see even smaller applications which present an ever increasing danger to our digital societies. One we have is often natural news. Former DEA chief propagandist says the agency knows marijuana is safe, but it's the agency's cash cow for more funding. Confirming what many people have long suspected, DEA representative has admitted that the agency knows marijuana is not dangerous, but continues to deny this in order to make money. Belita Nelson told a group of doctors and nurses at the Marijuana for Medical Professionals conference in Denver that the DEA's philosophy was marijuana is safe, we know it's safe, it's our cash cow, and we will never give it up. The agency's attention through her mission to help heroin addicts in her community get treatment by setting up a nonprofit. Nelson served as an international media representative for the DEA from 1998 to 2004, eventually becoming their chief propagandist. During her time with the agency, she appeared regularly on talk shows like Nightline and the Oprah Winfrey Show, talking about the dangers of cannabis. However, after seeing firsthand how marijuana eased the suffering and prolonged the life of a friend with cancer, her reservations grew, and the final straw came after discovering that the cannabis was helping some heroin addicts to break their opioid addictions. This led her to quit her job in 2004 in protest of the agency's illogical stance against cannabis. What happened next is unsettling but not surprising. Upon realizing they had forgotten to ask her to sign a confidentiality agreement when she was hired, the agency tried to buy her silence. They called me in and said, "Name your price, $10,000 a month, $20,000, what do you want, Belita?" Horrified, Nelson told them that she would not accept their money and that she would tell the world that the agency knows cannabis is safe and is keeping it from sick people who need it. Goes on in the agency as corruption on steroids. In an interview with Hemp Concierge magazine, she said that DEA offers a $10,000 a month was part of an attempt to turn her into a confidential informant against drug addicts she was helping with her nonprofit. She told that publication, "The war on drugs has corrupted law enforcement to the point where DEA is indistinguishable from the cartels." She now feels that the only real solution to the problem is the full legalization of all drugs. Today, Nelson is an advocate for medical marijuana, particularly for treating chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or it's commonly known as CTE. CTE is a degenerative brain disease that's brought on by repeated head trauma and has made a lot of headlines recently as being the cause of death for former football players. She founded an organization for players who suffer from the ailment, Iron Cannabis Foundation. The group aims to convince the NFL to give players the green light to use medical cannabis in order to help counter the onset of the illness. Last year, the DEA to change cannabis's classification as a Schedule I drug, but refused to do so on the grounds that more research is needed into this medical benefit. However, many people feel that this decision was largely made because cannabis is a threat to the profits of the powerful big pharma interests that support the agency and line its pockets. That a recent controversial ruling classifying all cannabinoids as Schedule I, which means they have no medical use and serious safety concerns, came in response to a request by Big Pharma to label them as such. Marijuana laws have made some great progress in recent years. It's hard to imagine serious inroads being made when the very agency that enforces drug laws is so incredibly corrupt. I have for you today. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up and share it on your social media so everybody gets to enjoy the news. Don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll stay informed.